shocker. Imagine my surprise. Just imagine my surprise when Uncle Casey found out that the WNBA is struggling to maintain their ratings without Caitlin Clark.
And that problem is Caitlin Clark not playing in WNBA games. Now, what all does this affect? The ratings are plummeting. Guys, there's ratings for a couple of these games that are eye-poppingly bad. We're talking about down in unrivaled territory.
It began like a slow leak in a ship everyone thought was unsinkable. One moment, the WNBA was riding a wave of historic growth, headlines touting record-breaking ratings, sold-out arenas, and the electric energy of Caitlin Clark's rookie season. Then, in the blink of an eye, it changed. One groin injury. The momentum didn't just slow, it collapsed. Ratings didn't dip. They plummeted. Networks that had recently celebrated 3.1 million viewers for Indiana Fever games were now staring at numbers barely half that. The league's brightest light was gone, and with her absence came a darkness no one was ready for. The fallout was immediate. Each game without Clark became a case study in audience evaporation. Matchups that once captivated millions suddenly struggled to reach 1.3 million viewers. This wasn't just a temporary slump. It exposed a fundamental truth. The WNBA wasn't prepared to thrive without its biggest star. This went beyond basketball. It was about survival. Networks, advertisers, and casual fans had been drawn into the league by a singular force, and they were walking away just as quickly. The speed of the decline stunned even seasoned analysts. A month earlier, Clark's games had been cultural events. They dominated social media, packed sports bars, and ignited conversations far beyond the court. Now, those same venues were back. To baseball, NFL preseason, or anything else that held attention. The WNBA had been selling more than a game. It was selling the Caitlin Clark experience. Without her, the product lost its identity. The fear wasn't just that the ratings had dropped, it was that they might not come back. For those watching closely, the numbers told a grim story. What had once been the marquee prime-time slot was now the league's most glaring weakness. Even rivalries that had been carefully crafted and hyped couldn't fill the void. Without Clark, even the most promising matchups fell flat. What was supposed to be a landmark summer turned into a cautionary tale. In sports, stars drive business. But when one player is propping up the entire league, the foundation becomes dangerously fragile. The WNBA was learning that lesson in real time. And this wasn't just a bad few weeks, it was a warning shot. Every day, Clark stayed sidelined. The league's hard-earned momentum slipped further away. Every day she didn't suit up, the WNBA's value to networks and sponsors chipped away. The marketing plan that had brought unprecedented attention to the league was deceptively simple. Caitlin Clark versus Angel Reese. It was the perfect rivalry, intense, competitive, and rich with narrative. For months, it worked. Every time they shared the court, ratings surged. But now, with both stars injured, that formula no longer worked. There was no rivalry, no spectacle, nothing to keep the casual viewer invested. When Clark and Reese were active, their games transcended basketball. They became events. Every play, every glance, every whistle carried weight. But the WNBA had built its 2024 season like a movie hinging entirely on its two lead actors. When both were gone, the supporting cast, no matter how skilled, couldn't carry the show. The fans weren't showing up for the ensemble. They came for the stars. Even networks had placed their bets on this rivalry. Primetime spots, nationally televised showcases, and cross-platform promotions had all been built around Clark and Reese. Without them, the investments lost meaning. The must-watch storylines disappeared overnight, leaving behind just regular basketball games between solid but unspectacular teams. Hardcore fans still tuned in. But the casual audience, the one responsible for the record-setting highs, moved on. The issue wasn't a lack of talent across the league. It was the lack of preparation. The spotlight had been fixed too tightly on just two players. When that light flickered out, so did the league's moment in the sun. And when those players were gone, the lights went out. It wasn't just an absence. It was a vacuum. The kind of void that swallows everything around it, leaving behind only the faint memory of what once was. The WNBA had built itself into a spectacle, centered around the momentum of two young stars. And when that center collapsed, the structure around it followed. This wasn't a twist of fate. It was a foreseeable collapse. The league had set itself up for this moment. Now it was, living with the consequences. What made it worse was the timing. The injuries came during the most critical stretch of the season, the lead-up to the playoffs, when audience engagement typically peaks and ratings matter most for negotiating future broadcast deals. Instead of entering the postseason with strength and leverage, the league was plummeting. Viewership didn't just decline, it unraveled. And in the unforgiving world of sports broadcasting, that kind of weakness is lethal. Networks and advertisers can smell it from a mile away. This wasn't just a statistical hiccup, it was catastrophic. A May 22nd matchup pulled over 3 million viewers. By August 10th, a similar meeting barely cleared 1.3 million. The loss of 1.7 million viewers in less than 3 months wasn't an anomaly, it was a collapse. This wasn't due to scheduling conflicts or competition from other sports. It was a direct consequence of missing star power. In TV metrics, that sharp A drop isn't a dip, it's a death spiral. For advertisers, it was a nightmare scenario. Sponsorship dollars hinge on reach, and when that reach vanishes, every commercial spot becomes less valuable. Networks, meanwhile, had invested in prime-time broadcast windows, expecting Clark to carry the numbers. Without her, they were left holding the bag. The ROI simply wasn't there. Each disappointing broadcast chipped away at the league's credibility, making it harder to justify its place at the top of sports programming in the future. The Indiana Fever felt the blow firsthand. With Clark out, their national relevance vanished. What had been appointment viewing suddenly became background noise. Casual fans weren't adjusting their weekends to watch a team missing its main attraction. While the hardcore Indiana fan base stuck around, the broader national audience that had surged around Clark's debut season evaporated. The shockwaves extended across the league. Games that didn't feature Clark began to underperform even more. Contests airing on NBA TV, games that, at the height of the Clark phenomenon, had been drawing 250,000 to 300,000 viewers, were now lucky to break 200,000. Some sank as low as 60,000. These weren't preseason scrimmages or late-night reruns. These were regular season games in what the league had claimed was its most successful, visible year ever. And yet, without Clark, that success looked less like real growth and more like a temporary sugar high. Inside the league's media strategy, there was visible chaos. Clark's injury updates were a mess. One week she was day-to-day, the next she was out indefinitely. At one point, ESPN began teasing an August 12th return, only for Clark's coach Stephanie White to later admit she hadn't even resumed practice. The messaging was confusing at best, misleading at worst. It started to feel less like injury management and more like damage control, an attempt to keep viewers invested in the possibility of a Clark return, even if that return was never close. The tactic might have bought a short-term ratings bump, but it came at the cost of long-term trust. Whispers began circulating that the Fever were being encouraged, if not pressured, to keep Clark's potential return in the news cycle, regardless of her actual condition. Game-time decision labels appeared on injury reports, only to disappear hours later. It was a PR sleight of hand. Smoke and mirrors meant to bait the audience into tuning in. And while it might have worked once or twice, fans don't like being played. Once they feel duped, they walk, and they don't always come back. Some defended the secrecy as a way to protect Clark from opponents targeting her injury. Others saw it as a blatant ratings gimmick. The truth probably lives somewhere in the middle. But no matter the motive, the damage was done. The audience grew frustrated. The excitement that had once surrounded each Clark appearance curdled into doubt and fatigue. And frustration is a dangerous emotion in sports. It turns loyal viewers into skeptics. It turns cultural moments into fleeting trends. What made the situation more infuriating was that Clark's injury wasn't just bad luck. It was the result of a season-long failure. From the moment she stepped onto a WNBA court, she was treated like a battering ram. Contact was constant: elbows, arm grabs, undercuts. Things that wouldn't be tolerated against other stars were waved off when Clark was involved. She didn't get the whistle that other league leaders received. She was officiated like a rookie with something to prove, not like the franchise-level player she was. The result wasn't just rough basketball, it was accumulated damage. The league's officials didn't protect its most valuable asset, and now she was paying the price. In the NBA, star protection is almost a given. The league ensures that its biggest names stay on the court, both for competitive integrity and financial sense. In the WNBA, that same philosophy hadn't been applied. Clark was left exposed to physical punishment, and when her body finally broke down, it felt less like an accident and more like the natural outcome of negligence. While the Fever were the first to suffer from her absence, the league itself was staring down a deeper problem. The 2024 season had been built on a delicate framework, one that relied almost entirely on two players. When Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese were healthy, it worked. Games were electric, interest was soaring, but when both stars were sidelined, the system crumbled. Other players were talented, teams were competitive, but the audience had been sold a headline act, and when the leads were gone, so was the show. The WNBA's momentum wasn't built on broad-based growth. It was built on a spotlight that had been tightly focused on a few faces. When those faces disappeared, so did the viewers, and what the league was left with wasn't a rising tide. It was a harsh reminder. In professional sports, you can't fake star power. You can't substitute hype for substance. And you can't build a lasting foundation on the shoulders of one or two players, no matter how brilliant they are. The question now isn't just when Caitlin Clark will return. It's whether the league will learn from what her absence revealed.